She recognized him instantly, the man who had testified against her brother 5 years ago, sending him to prison for a crime he didn't commit. Now he was kneeling beside her, offering his hand as she lay helpless on the rain-soaked sidewalk, her wheelchair overturned beside her. The cruel irony made her breath catch in her throat. "Let me help you," he said, his voice gentle with concern, completely unaware of who she was. Mia Collins stared up at him, raindrops mixing with the tears she couldn't hold back. This man, Daniel Foster, had destroyed her family with his eyewitness testimony, and now fate had thrown them together in this vulnerable moment. She had spent years imagining confronting him, demanding to know why he'd lied, but never like this, never from the ground, with her dignity stripped away and her independence compromised. "I'm fine," she managed, her voice barely audible over the drumming rain. But she wasn't fine. Her law firm presentation, the one that could make partner, started in 20 minutes, her portfolio was scattered across the wet concrete, and the one person offering help was the man she'd sworn to make pay for what he'd done. The busy downtown crowd streamed past, umbrellas bobbing, eyes averted from her predicament. No one stopped. No one except him. Daniel's eyes reflected genuine concern as he gathered her papers, protecting them inside his jacket. "Please, let me help you up. I'm not leaving you here like this." His stubbled face showed no recognition, no hint that he remembered testifying against Thomas Collins in that courtroom. The rain plastered his dark hair to his forehead as he waited for her response, patient despite being soaked to the skin. Mia had a choice: refuse his help and remain stranded, or accept assistance from the man she'd hated for years. With her presentation looming and her career hanging in the balance, she reluctantly nodded. As Daniel carefully helped her back into her wheelchair, their hands touched, sending an unexpected current through her that had nothing to do with hatred. "Thank you," she said stiffly, accepting her portfolio. "I need to get to Harrington Tower immediately." "That's 15 blocks from here," Daniel said, glancing at the downpour. "You'll never make it in time. My car's just around the corner." "I can drive you." The offer hung between them, weighted with an irony only she understood. Accepting help from him felt like betrayal to her brother, who was still serving his sentence. But missing this presentation meant losing everything she'd worked for, including her chance to afford the new evidence review that might finally free Thomas. "All right," she agreed, her voice tight. "But just to be clear, this doesn't make us friends." Daniel looked surprised at her coldness but nodded. "Of course. I'm just trying to help." As he navigated her wheelchair through the rain, Mia fought the confusion swirling inside her. Why was the man who had ruined her family's life now going out of his way to help her? And why did his kindness make her chest ache with something dangerously close to doubt? In his car, a modest sedan with a worn interior, Daniel turned to her. "I'm Daniel, by the way." "I know exactly who you are," Mia replied before she could stop herself. His hands froze on the steering wheel. "Have we met before?" The question hung in the air as thunder cracked overhead. Mia stared at his profile, at the man who had seemed so certain in court when he pointed at her brother. Now was her chance to confront him, to demand answers, but doing so might cost her the ride she desperately needed. "No," she lied. "You just look familiar." Daniel studied her face for a moment longer, then nodded and started the car. As they pulled into traffic, Mia noticed his hands trembling slightly on the wheel. Was it possible he did remember? Or was there something else troubling this man who had once seemed so confident in his testimony? They drove in tense silence until Daniel cleared his throat. "I don't usually do this, offer rides to strangers. But something about seeing you there." He trailed off, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "I guess I know what it's like when everyone just walks past." The vulnerability in his voice caught Mia off guard. This wasn't the callous liar she'd imagined all these years. This was a man who seemed haunted by something, just as she was. "I'm late for the most important presentation of my career," she offered, surprising herself by sharing anything with him. "If I make partner today, everything changes for me. And for Thomas," she added silently. Daniel glanced at her. "You're a lawyer?" "Yes. Corporate law." "That's..." He hesitated. "That's admirable." Mia almost laughed at the irony. She'd become a lawyer because of him, because of what he'd done to her brother. She'd wanted to understand the system that had failed Thomas so completely. As they approached Harrington Tower, Daniel suddenly pulled over, his face pale. "I can't go there," he said, his voice strained. "What? Why not?" Mia demanded, panic rising. She was still 10 minutes away, and the rain showed no signs of letting up. Daniel's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "5 years ago, I testified in a case. I thought I was doing the right thing, but..." He swallowed hard. "The man I identified, I've had doubts ever since. And his lawyer worked at Harrington." Mia's heart thundered in her chest. He was talking about Thomas. About her. "What kind of doubts?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "The police showed me his photo before the lineup. They told me he had a record. I was so sure at the time, but later..." Daniel's voice cracked. "Later I remembered details that didn't match. I tried to contact the prosecutor, but they said it was too late, that the case was closed." The revelation hit Mia like a physical blow. All these years, she'd imagined him as a deliberate liar, someone who had knowingly sent her brother to prison. Never had she considered he might be carrying his own burden of doubt and regret. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked, her carefully constructed hatred beginning to crumble. Daniel met her eyes. "Because I've been trying to make it right somehow. And helping you today, it felt like maybe a small step toward that." The irony was almost too much to bear. Here was the man she'd vilified for years, confessing his doubts and his attempts at redemption to the very person most affected by his mistake, without even knowing who she was. "I need to get to my presentation," Mia said, her mind reeling. "We can discuss this after." Daniel nodded and pulled back into traffic. As they approached Harrington Tower, Mia made a split-second decision. "Come up with me," she said. "What? Why would you want?" "Because after my presentation, there's someone in my firm you need to meet. Someone who might be able to help with your doubts." Hope flickered across Daniel's face, the same hope Mia had been clinging to for 5 years. As he helped her from the car, their eyes met in a moment of connection neither had anticipated when the day began. The rain continued to fall as they entered the building together, the witness and the sister, bound by a mistake that had shaped both their lives, now facing the possibility of redemption neither had dared to imagine possible. Mia's presentation went brilliantly, her mind somehow clearer with Daniel sitting at the back of the room. When she introduced him to her mentor afterward, explaining his situation in careful terms, the senior partner's interest was immediately piqued. "We might have grounds for a review," he said, examining Daniel's statement. "Especially with the procedural issues you've described." 2 weeks later, Thomas Collins walked free, exonerated by new evidence and Daniel's revised testimony. Standing outside the prison gates, Mia watched her brother embrace freedom for the first time in 5 years. When he saw Daniel standing beside her, his body tensed. "It's okay," Mia said, taking both their hands. "We all have a lot to talk about." That evening, as they shared a meal together, victim, witness, and advocate, Mia realized that sometimes redemption comes from the most unexpected places. Sometimes it begins with a fall on a rainy sidewalk and a hand extended in kindness. "I never thought I'd say this," she told Daniel as they walked together afterward, "but I'm glad it was you who stopped that day." Daniel's smile held both sadness and hope. "I think maybe we were both falling in different ways. Maybe we both needed someone to stop." As they paused beneath a streetlight, the rain having finally ceased, Mia realized that the hatred she'd carried for so long had been washed away, replaced by something she hadn't thought possible. Understanding, forgiveness, and perhaps, in time, something more. Their story wasn't just about justice restored. It was about how a single moment of compassion could begin to heal wounds that had seemed beyond repair. It was about second chances and the courage to face mistakes. Most of all, it was about the power of human connection to transform lives when we least expect it. And as Daniel's hand found hers in the gentle aftermath of the storm, Mia knew their journey was just beginning. The weeks that followed brought changes none of them could have predicted. Thomas, though free, struggled to reintegrate into a world that had moved on without him. Job interviews ended abruptly when his incarceration came up, and old friends kept their distance, unsure how to bridge the 5-year gap. Mia watched her brother's initial elation fade into quiet frustration, and she found herself calling Daniel more often than she'd expected, seeking the perspective of someone who understood guilt and redemption from a different angle. "He needs purpose," Daniel said one evening as they walked through the park, their breath visible in the autumn air. "When I was at my lowest after the trial, volunteering at the community center gave me something to focus on besides my mistakes." He hesitated, then added, "They're always looking for help with their literacy program." Mia studied his profile, still amazed at how her perception of him had transformed. The man she'd once imagined as a monster was thoughtful, deeply remorseful, and surprisingly gentle. "Would you go with him? The first time, I mean. I think he might listen to you in a way he can't hear me right now." Their fingers brushed as they walked, neither acknowledging the contact nor pulling away. The tentative connection between them was still too fragile to name, built on a foundation that should have made it impossible. Yet there was something undeniable growing in the spaces between their shared pain. Thomas was skeptical at first, but with nowhere else to turn, he agreed to visit the center with Daniel. Watching them leave together that first day, Mia felt a strange mixture of hope and fear. These two men, whose lives had been devastated by a single mistaken identification, were now attempting to forge something new from the wreckage. It seemed both impossible and essential. When they returned hours later, Thomas was animated in a way Mia hadn't seen since before his arrest. "There's this kid there," he told her, barely 16, trying to get his GED after dropping out. "Smart as hell, but nobody ever taught him how to study." His eyes held purpose again. "I'm going back tomorrow."